She was beautiful, beautiful to my eyes from the moment I saw her. Sun filled the skies. She was oh so beautiful, beautiful just to hold in my dreams. She was springtime, winter. How could I tell her what I so clearly could see? Though I longed for her, another trusted me completely, so I never could be free. Ah, but it is beautiful knowing now that she cared. I will always remember times that we shared. Now it's all over, but the feeling lingers on. Oh, my dream keeps returning. She's gone, but it was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful to be
Well, that was that marvellous night for us all, an unusual experience for most of the 3LO staff to be up in a space like the concert hall, but Michael totally at home. Michael actually just loved performing. He wasn't a vain man at all. There was a delightfully guileless quality to him, but given a chance to tell a story or sing a song, and Michael was always there. The Hugh Jones he was referring to was Hugh from the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra in that beautiful little harp interlude in the cavatina. Michael was very respected by all musicians, particularly the members of the MSO, and Kevin Hocking gave us that wonderful arrangement for Michael. And again, just it's flashed into my mind as I was listening, we were both in the same wings just before Michael went on to do that, and he said, golly, I hope I can hold that last note. It's quite, and he was practicing. Well, back to other people Jocelyn managed to contact, people who had worked with Michael, going quite a few years back now. And first of all, we'll hear from Judy Banks and then Joe Latona, who worked with Michael on a couple of occasions. Well, more than that.
Judy, when you and Michael were working together, television was very different, wasn't it?
Well, it was in those days, Jocelyn, because we didn't then have auto cue or idiot sheets, and it really made you keep on the ball. You had to think ahead all the time, and Michael was such a professional. I really admired him. He'd done a lot of work in England, I think, before he came out to Australia, but what impressed me the most, I think, was that, especially when we were doing Bandwagon, it was so chaotic and we had lots of quick changes and the flats would fall down and Michael would just sort of stand there, and he was so cool, that was the word in those days. He was able to detach himself from all this chaos around him, and when he sang that song at the end, you know, May You Always, oh, we used to think, oh, thank heavens we've got to the end of the show, but I think Michael could have gone on and on. He was such a pro and such a warm and generous performer, really.
And this effect of him being so cool and collected, would that calm the rest of you down if you were feeling frenetic?
Well, it did, really, because he was very laid back. I used to think he was like a Sinatra. He's warm, you know, it was like honey, his voice. But I used to feel very secure working with Michael. We co-compared a show called Fall for the Show in Sydney. It was just a joy to work with him, and I feel very honoured, really, to have known him and shared the odd laugh or two every now and then.
I guess when you were working, you were so flat out. Did you really get to know Michael terribly well at that time?
Not really, Jocelyn. I mean, I think he was always slightly bemused by me, you know, because I was just starting off in the business, and, you know, it was all so wonderful. I was always on cloud nine, and I used to feel that he used to be rather amused and almost paternal, you know. Who was this zany little lady, you know, she's got a lot to learn.
What stands out most in your mind now about Michael as the person, the professional person that you knew?
Well, he was just very much in control. I don't think I ever remember Michael ever being ruffled about anything. He did never throw a tantrum. And he did sort of have this presence that anybody working with him immediately felt very relaxed. He was also very good in the theatre. I mean, when he sang Saturday Girl, I mean, I think he bewitched everybody. It was a beautiful song, and he was lovely in that show, Lola Montez. He's a very pleasant man, and we'll all miss him, and I just feel very honoured to have been one of the people that had the pleasure of working with him.
Joe Latona, when did you first work with Michael Cole?
I would think it was back in the early 60s when I was at Channel 7 producing and choreographing the Dilo and Daly shows. For some unknown reason, Noel Spencer decided to put a Monday night instant television show on, live to air about 9:30, and we had a gentleman from the radio scene sort of making a TV debut, but unfortunately wasn't up to the standard that was necessary for comparing. And Michael Cole was brought into the show as compere and vocalist.
Did Michael have to do any dancing or moving? Did you have to train him in that way at all?
No, I must admit I did try and push him around for a while, but I thought it was rather hopeless. So I thought, well, just prop there, Mike, and sing a lovely song.
What did you think of his voice?
I loved it. I thought it was had nice quality in it. It was very tuneful. A little laid-back, but that was him, you know. I thought that he could have been a little bit more outgoing in his singing, but that's the way he preferred to do it, so he stayed there like that.
Did you work with him later on in other shows?
Yes, at Channel 9 at one period I was over there producing Graham Kennedy, and Michael was producing one of the other shows of the 4 or 5 shows a week that they did. Then the next time I saw or got with Michael was at the ABC, where we were doing the Saturday shows, and also belonged to our tennis club. Yes, we have a little tennis club called Tennis, the Anyone for Tennis Club. Star-studded little ensemble.
Did he sing while he served?
No, it took him all his time to get his breath to serve, you know. But he was a great guy, Mike. I never saw him raise his voice in temper or rage, or just a nice man.
Isn't it marvellous to hear everybody agreeing on that factor? He was also a very thoughtful person. Michael was a marvellous son to his parents. Sadly, they've had a lot of illness in the last few weeks, and if they happen to be listening to the program today, be assured that Michael always spoke so lovingly of you, and I think you might particularly enjoy this song.
Everybody knows him as old folks. Like the seasons, he'll come and he'll go. Just as free as a bird and as good as his word. That's why we all love him so. Always leaving his spoon in his coffee, tucks his napkin up under his chin, and that old corncob pipe, it's so mellow, it's ripe, but you needn't be ashamed of him. Every Friday he'll go fishing down around the lake, but he only caught a perch or two. The whale got away. I guess I'll warm up the steak. Someday there's gonna be no more old folks. What a lonesome old world this will be. Children's voices at play will be still for a day. The day they take old folks away. Every Friday he goes fishing down around the lake, but he only caught a perch or two. A whale got away. I guess I'll warm up the steak. Someday there's gonna be no more old folks. What a lonesome old world this will be. Children's voices at play will be stilled for a day. The day they take old folks away.
10 years back, that takes us to a little 15-minute package of the ABC television cruise called Star Artist. Radio it was, I beg your pardon. Well, the man, I guess, who had most to do with Michael during the Saturday shows speaks now, and that's the executive producer, Frank Ward.
Well, I'd heard of Michael as a performer, of course, with Lola Montez. And the first time I ever met him and worked with him in any capacity was an ABC television program called Four of a Kind that starred Michael, Judy Banks, Stuart Finch, myself. And that was in the 60s. It was after he'd done Lola Montez. I knew of him and his reputation as a performer, but that was the first time I actually worked with him.
And how did he strike you then? Did you get on with him?
Very well, yeah, very, very well. He's a very easygoing person and a thorough pro. I like working with pros, and he was thoroughly professional. In the short time, we struck up quite a decent friendship.
And of course you directed him in the Saturday show, didn't you?
Oh, yes, when John McNally was unavailable for the second series and we were searching desperately for someone to, well, compare is not the right word, but compare the second series, I said to Michael Shrimpton, whatever happened to Michael Cole? And he said, Michael Cole, why didn't I think of that? He works for the ABC. And I said, great, what does he look like? He said, what do you mean, what is? I said, well, I haven't seen him for so long, what does he look like? And he said, he looks fine. I said, well, right, why don't we do that? And so that's how Michael came to front the Saturday show. Possibly one of the most important features of the Saturday show was the contact that Michael got between himself, the show, and the audience out there. And this is very difficult because of Michael's easygoing way. He made it look so easy. It was taken for granted and really wasn't given the time and the trouble that it should have been given. We would do the numbers, the production numbers, the singing, the dancing, and almost as an oversight, we'd say, oh, now we've got to do the introductions. Mike, stand on that spot. Okay, camera, go. And he would stand there and didn't have any cue cards or any porta prompt or anything, and he'd just stand there and deliver, which is very, very difficult to do. And you don't realize how difficult it is until you get someone who can't do it. And then you go for take 7 and take 8. But there was none of that with Michael. If you did a second take, it was a rarity. We had just total confidence in him. He would knock off 4 or 5, possibly at the end of the day when he's done an opening number, he's done his own number, he's done the finale and a medley, and that was a great tribute to his professionalism, that he bothered to go home and learn at night on his own time.
Because I think Michael had been ill already before he came to that program, hadn't he?
He'd had one heart scare. It did worry him. He was recuperating. I think he'd had it sort of 6 months, 9 months before he came into the show, and we took it easy. Another thing about Michael, too, was that he sang live more than any other performer in the group. He liked to sing live. A great tribute to him was that you couldn't tell any difference between, normally on a pre-recorded vocal, you will get a better vocal than you will when they're singing live, because if you make any sort of blue, either tempo-wise or pitch-wise, you can go back and drop it in. But Michael was such a pro that he could sing difficult songs live and get exactly the same result that you would if you'd pre-recorded it. He was marvellous.
What about his voice? What did you think about it generally?
He had a trained voice, and when I first worked with him, he used to sing baritone with a very sharp edge. Later on, his voice had softened into that crooning style that he had, but he was still a very good musician. I loved his voice. It was very easy, very in the Crosby, Sinatra, Dick Haymes type, because those were the singers that he admired.
I remember a tribute to Frank Sinatra. That was a rather lovely one.
Oh, well, what happened was, I said to Michael, I said, look, if ever you come up with any idea for a segment for yourself, let me know, and we'll talk about it. And he said, I'd like to do a tribute to Sinatra. I said, terrific. I said, well, pick the numbers that you'd like to sing, and so I sort of handed it all over to him, and he got with Kevin Hocking. He picked the numbers that he wanted to sing and the arrangements and how he wanted the arrangements. And I remember the afternoon that we did it. I remember because Talbot Duck Manton was down here, and he came in while we were doing the show, and we were doing the Sinatra segment. Michael was very, very happy with that. He loved doing it. He also liked getting away from being the compere. He was always dying to get into characters. And so when we did the modern musical comedies, well, like the South Pacifics and the Oklahomas, modern as opposed to the New Moons and the Naughty Mariettas and the White Horse Inns and things like that, he loved to get in and be one of the sailors with the hat on the back of his head saying, there is nothing like a dame, and being a character, getting out of being Michael Cole. He loved doing that. He had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess that was the actor reasserting himself.
Exactly, yes. The one he loved was Guys and Dolls. He loved all that. He really had a ball.
In the wee small hours of the morning, when the whole wide world is fast asleep, you lie awake and think about the girl. Never ever think of counting sheep. She gets too hungry for dinner at 8, likes the theater but never comes late. She never bothers with people she hates. That's why the lady is a tramp. She loves the free, fresh wind in her hair, life without care. She's broke, well that's okay. Hates California, it's cold and it's damp. That's why the lady is a tramp. It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. So set 'em up, Joe. I've got a little story you ought to know. We're drinking, my friend, to the end of a brief episode. So make it one for my baby and one more for the road. I get no kick from champagne. Mere alcohol doesn't thrill me at all. So tell me, why should it be true that I get a kick out of you? I get no kick in a plane, flying too high with some guy in the sky is my idea of nothing to do. Yet I get a kick when your lonely heart has learned its lesson. You'd be hers if only she would call in the wee small hours of the morning. That's the time you miss her most of all.
Well, we can understand why Michael loved to sing Sinatra, because he did it so particularly well. I guess there were masses of colleagues who wanted to make comments about their association with Michael, but in the last months he was very close with his colleagues out at Radio Australia. One of those close friends was John Anderson. The two things they had in common was that they used to beat our roster girl over the head because they were both tennis players. John always wanted Saturday afternoons off, and Michael always wanted Sunday mornings for his Anyone for Tennis club. But here's John.
I had admired and respected Michael Cole's talents over some 20 years. I remember well his TV shows on Channel 7 and later his frequent guest singing appearances on various television shows over the years. My first recollection of him was as the star of the London and then Australian production of the musical Lola Montez, which brought him to Australia. About 9.5 years ago, I joined the ABC after about 15 years in commercial radio. Since that time, I've considered Michael a genial workmate and friend. The most unique aspect of his character I will always recall was that, whether enjoying the stardom of the recent Saturday show on Channel 2, comparing and singing in his unassuming, effortless, yet totally professional style, or simply reading news on radio, his manner never changed in his contact with friends and associates. He was a softly spoken, humble, friendly man who never sought a pedestal worthy of his talents. His greatest achievements were, in Michael's estimations, I believe, his marriage in recent years to his wife Elaine, and the birth of his beloved daughter Jennifer, now aged 4. I, like many friends and workmates, were terribly shocked at his passing. For my part, I was moved to write this poem, which I now dedicate to my friend Michael Cole. Where have you gone, O friend of mine? I cannot see your face. Just yesterday could clear define your human charm and grace. Like all who walk upon this earth, unique indeed you were. Your fears, your hopes, your wit, your mirth, so much I could refer. Yet now, when I call out in sorrow, as images fade to black, why take this journeyer on the morrow? I've no power to bring him back. And as the growing list of leavers silently accrue, cling steadfast, heaven's true believers, until it's time for you.
In all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
And, God willing, we'll be seeing you one day again too, Michael Cole. But thank you for the 53 years of pleasure you gave to family, friends, viewers and listeners. 3 hello, the time now is 4 o'clock.